I start speaking on.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Can you hear us okay? Perfect.
As I get started.
All right. All right. Thank you, Robin. Hope everybody's joining us. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. Let me share my screen.
It's spring break. Warmest day of the week. Is it gonna be colder? No, tomorrow will be a little bit warmer, but today it's cold. Yeah.
All right. And can everybody see my screen? Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, thank you everybody for joining me today or joining us today. My name is Jane Georgilis and I'm with the Texas State University Small Business Development Center or SBDC, and we are part of the Texas Southwest SBDC network. The vision of our network is to foster small business success with the vision to be the premier resource for small business resources. Here in Texas, our values are integrity, excellence, service, and innovation. And our network has been serving the Texas Southwest region since 1987, and our services are provided to startups and established small business at no cost due to the tax dollar that has been paid. And our services include professional business advising, training, and also market research. And together within our network, we have 10 SBDC centers, 3 specialty centers, and we are all accredited member of the SBDC America's SBDC network with 1,000 plus location nationwide. And like I mentioned earlier, our services are available to you at no cost due to the tax dollar has been paid. Here are the list of our services that you can utilize. And if you are within our network or outside of our network and would like to utilize the service of an SBDC, please feel free to scan the QR code or use the link right below to locate your local SBDC and reach out to us. And this is a friendly reminder that this is a listen-only webinar, so please use the chat to send us your question, interact with us. And note that the perspective shared today by our panelists reflect their individual viewpoints and do not constitute official position of the Texas State SBDC. And without further ado, I will pass it over to our moderator, Jana Menifee, and she can introduce our panelists today and get today started.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. And it's so nice to have everybody here with us today. We have an international panelist again this month. So excited that we have so many wonderful people that are going to be on our panel here today. So let me start with those here in the room. Anyway, I'm Jana Menifee, and thank you so much for everyone for being here today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day. We know you could spend it a lot of different ways, and the fact that you're here with us, we really appreciate it. So Bill, would you like to start? Tell us who you are.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Thompson. I'm Associate Director of the Small Business Development Center at Texas State University.
Hello, everyone. Jonathan Alba. I teach at the Moody School of Communication at UT Austin and the McComb School of Business. I'm a former Chief Operating Officer of a small business.
Great. And let's go online. Coach Juli, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'd be happy to. Thank you. I'm Juli Shulem. I'm a productivity coach and industrial organizational psychologist, and I work with business owners, leaders in corporate environments, and solopreneurs who are looking to improve their productivity.
Awesome. Glad to have you here, Juli. And Jeffrey.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Stein with Schooley Mitchell, and I help businesses optimize their vendor relationships so that they can keep more of their hard-earned money in their pockets.
And Gladdy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Gladdy. I'm an executive virtual assistant, marketing assistant, and web developer who's currently working with Jana and supports business owners as well by keeping their operations organized and their online presence.
And you do a great job with that, keeping me organized.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I don't know what I would do without Gladdy, without her helping me all the time. And then I'm Jana Menifee, and I do certified business valuations with Menifee LLC. And I'm going to put in my website. So if you'd like to get on our newsletter so that we can keep, well, I say we, but we all know that it's not me that does that, but Gladdy will put you on our newsletter and keep you updated about our different webinars that we have coming up with the Strategic Value Master Series. So glad to have everybody here today. So let's get started with some questions. We were supposed to have one other person join us from England today, but it looks like she wasn't able to make it, unfortunately. So, and I was really looking to have her here because she has such a cool stuff. So, Bill, when you talk, because you use like an English accent today.
Yeah, that'll work really well.
So I'll just give you Nicole's questions, and
Yeah.
you can just like speak with an accent.
Yeah, right.
No?
No.
Okay. So let's start with Coach Juli then. When you start working with a new coaching client, how quickly can you tell whether they have solid processes in place? What are the warning signs?
It's a great question. So usually I can tell in the first conversation or two, honestly, because my clients are generally coming to me with some challenges right off the bat. So most of them tell me that they're having issues with productivity, they're overwhelmed, they're not able to get projects or those tasks associated with projects done in a timely manner, and that they're pretty much disorganized. So it doesn't take long to figure out that there are few, if any, systems in place. Some of the warning signs that I hear about and see, one in particular is that if they find that the same problems keep resurfacing, that's generally because there's no defined workflow or processes in place to prevent these things from occurring over and over again, and that they have to make the same kind of decisions over and over, which is, aside from being really frustrating, it's a huge waste of time. Another area might be if staff or assistants and people that I'm working with, the team with the business owner or the leader, if they tell me that they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing and that their boss doesn't take time to teach them, that's a sign that there may be, again, no protocols in place. So one of the things that I do with my clients consistently is set up systems. That's kind of the name of my game.
Yes, that's really important. And I'm so glad Nicole is here, and she's joined us from England, and I've already said that she has a really cool accent. So I hope that wasn't offensive.
Not at all.
Okay, great. So let's get you talking, because you were going to be my first question of the day. So you help Series B CEOs. Well, first of all, introduce yourself, Nicole.
Of course. So sorry, I wasn't.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole McLaughlin. I'm the founder of a consultancy called International Edge, helping founders of predominantly software companies regain momentum as those companies grow quicker than their decisions can scale, quicker than authorizations become clear. I am a lifelong HR professional, previously chief HR officer for a software company, worked for a range of different organizations, household names like Samsung and Palantir that you might know. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome. So you help Series B CEOs identify where execution is stuck. What role do undocumented or broken processes play in that stuckness? And what's the cost of ignoring that?
I think the cost of ignoring it, first and foremost, is loss of momentum, loss of talent, loss of agency, and productivity. I think oftentimes, being a solopreneur myself and working with family businesses, a lot of the ways of working, the decision making sits in the founders' heads or the heads of those in that kind of initial team, and getting that out of their head and documented in a way that others can follow those processes takes intentionality. I think also how those decisions are made isn't always clear. Having worked in a startup before starting my own consultancy, I remember very well how a lot of the ways of working and the decisions that were made were within the CEO's head or the CTO's head or the CFO's head. And as they brought on new starters, how they thought about processes and getting things done wasn't always clear to them, certainly wasn't clear to their team. And so a lot of time was spent kind of checking in for decisions and permissions, which slowed the business down. So I think that's kind of the biggest pain I see, is where CEOs and founders or senior leaders become the bottleneck, not through any choice of their own, but because a lot of the things sit in their head and it's not documented, as Julie said, and people around them don't know. So it's how do you kind of become clear about the ways of working, getting it down somewhere where people can find it, and then empowering them and giving them the autonomy to make the decisions to get things done.
Yeah, and I should have done this at the very beginning, which I did not, was really talk about what our topic was today. And it's all about standard operating procedures, right? Having processes in place. So Bill, when you have SBDC clients come in, are they resistant to putting in processes?
Not intentionally, but so many of, probably 80% of what we see are solo entrepreneurs just launching their business. And so they tend to wear all the hats, and they don't think about putting an SOP in place. They don't think about putting systems together. They just start doing everything from checking the mail to mopping the floor to doing whatever squeaky wheels in front of them. We had one as a manufacturer that didn't, and he really got in trouble when he started growing because he didn't have enough time to look at his financials and take care of his financials. He had any systems together. So it's critical as soon as possible, put those SOPs together and just create the systems and the training is when you bring somebody in, what the training you're going to give them so that they can follow the SOP, as opposed to just sticking them in a task and letting them figure it out, because they may not.
Yeah, and from the valuation standpoint, I think I need to point out what's important is if somebody does have these standard operating policies in place, the valuation of the business is much greater, right? Because if you're trying to sell your business, you're selling a job if you don't have those SOPs in there. And you don't want to buy a job, right? You want to buy an investment when you're buying a business. So that's something that's very important. So let's go to Gladdy. Gladdy is awesome. Have I mentioned that before? Gladdy is with her, and so Gladdy and I, for anybody that hasn't been with us before, Gladdy has helped me set up my own CRM. We set up Pipedrive together. And with Gladdy, one thing that a lot of our discussion is about our standard operating procedures and putting those into place. So that's a constant conversation that Gladdy and I have all the time. So Gladdy, as a virtual assistant, you work inside clients' businesses every day. Walk us through how you help document processes. What's your approach when nothing is written down?
So usually when I'm given a task, the client will either explain how the process works, or I'll need to explore the system and figure out the workflow myself. So as I complete the task, I pay close attention to each steps involved so I can fully understand how it works. And once the task is done, I document the process in an Excel sheet or any system by outlining the step-by-step instructions. I also include notes, important details, and any tips that could make the tasks easier to repeat in the future. This helps create a simple reference guide so the process can be followed consistently later on, either by me or by other team members. And over time, this documentation becomes a useful resource for the business because it turns everyday tasks into clear, repeatable processes.
And I can attest that that's exactly what you do, because we just brought on a new team member and you were walking her through just the steps exactly about how to go through the CRM and check the emails and which ones to do and everything like that. So she really does do everything she says she's doing. Jonathan, Jeffrey, I know that you probably thought that I had forgotten you, but I haven't. So you help businesses find cash by reviewing accounts receivable, sales tax, and other areas. How do you process gaps in these areas, cost businesses money, and what should owners be looking at?
Excuse me. The biggest problem that we very often see is that businesses set up everything once and then they don't look at it. Everything goes on autopilot. Everything's getting paid automatically. Nobody's reviewing invoices. Everybody's focused on the new clients, new business coming in, maintaining current relationships, and they just don't go and take the time to look at their other expenses. So we try to go in and help them look at those everyday expenses, their telecom, data expenses, software subscriptions, waste management, utilities, and a bunch of other areas. And very often we'll find money that's just been leaking out the back door that could be going to profits or helping grow the business because they just don't have the time or often desire, quite frankly, to go deal with companies like, Waste Management and Verizon. And it's just, getting out of that autopilot process and paying attention to those bills because it really does add up.
Jonathan, you're a communication expert. So as a communication expert, what's the best way for a small business owner to communicate processes, standard operating processes to the rest of their team?
In multiple ways. So the best practice is if I say it, they'll do it, which is the worst practice. So work a lot with communication, right? And communication in multiple ways: visual, audio, and if you can make them see it or smell it or taste it, that's an added bonus. But I haven't found a way to do that. So really,
paper.
I mean, we process things through our senses. So really, best practice is to say it again, repeat it almost every day like a mantra. And then, I brought today like best practices and how to write an SOP. So providing it to them in written form, visual form, it's just repeatedly doing it because we're training new behavior, developing new habits. So yeah, written and audio.
Maybe share that document with our participants. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Case in point, our director here, he will write it down, talk it, we experience it, and then he repeats it because there's so much coming at us at some time that it takes a while to get all the operating procedures down for the SBDC. There's so many different things that we have to do.
We under communicate by a magnitude about 10. So like anytime you want someone to implement a new SOP or behavior or habit, I know that I need to communicate that it's like I need to make it into a mantra and then communicate it repeatedly. People get sick of me when I'm in leadership roles because I'm just repeating myself time and time again until they remember it and they can do it.
So Coach Juli and Nicole, both of you, how do you get your clients to actually put in these policies, standard operating policies, and what do you do to help them to remember those things, to use them?
Nicole, you want to go? I'll go, okay. The policies that my clients end up putting together are generally for themselves and maybe one or two staff members. I work with generally the business owner, and they need policies for themselves, aside from something that is for the whole organization in general. So a lot of times the people I'm working with they don't have any systems, even using their own calendar. So I'm starting at, basic stuff with a lot of my clients and how to get set up with your calendar properly, how to manage projects and tasks properly, and how to prioritize and sequence and make decisions and strategic planning. All of these areas are my area of expertise. I actually also tend to work with the majority of my population of my clients are dealing with ADHD. So I am well skilled in how to deal with non-neurotypical brains. So there are systems that I'm helping people set up that are different often from what someone whose brain is wired differently might use.
How about you, Nicole? What do you do to help people implement and keep following those SOPs?
What do we do to help them to implement and continue to follow them? I think similar to how Gladdy works with, I think she was saying, part of it is sitting alongside them and observing how they're doing it, and documenting it for them. But to get them to do it, I think what I have found in my experience is that there has to be a burning platform for change. So, when they're experiencing the fact that getting their team member to do a particular thing is taking longer than they might have wanted it to happen in the first place, and the frustration is building, that tends to make them more inclined to want to sit with me and to document it alongside me. I find getting people to follow those processes, when I think about larger organizations I've worked with, it's more about how you incentivize that sort of behavior. So recognizing it, reinforcing it, praising people for when they're doing the particular thing well, where budgets allow, incentivizing them to do it. That oftentimes needs to be a bit of a carrot, sometimes a bit of a stick, to get people to follow these things. So part of it's about having the burning platform to make the person whose procedure it is feel the need to document it. And then there's how do you maybe, in addition to communicating it several times, demonstrate the process. People sometimes learn best observing somebody doing it, rather than just seeing it. Doesn't always work for me. I have to experience it. I'm more of an experiential learner. Some other people like that also, right? And then there's giving them the positive affirmation, recognition for doing the thing well, to reinforce the behavior so that it becomes habitual, and where possible, incentivizing them to continue doing so.
So Jeffrey, so you're working with people, they already have some standard operating procedures in place, but they just let them keep going and going and going. So what kind of suggestions do you make to them about, or to other people that are listening to this webinar? What best practices can you say to them about how to review their SOPs? Is it on a regular basis? What do you suggest to them so they can find that cash that they're missing?
Well, if someone decides that they want to work with us, we're going to take on that process that they don't want to put the time or energy into. So we're actually going to, if we identify savings, we're then going to continue working with them, month after month, to review those invoices, make sure they're always accurate, make sure that they're getting what we projected that they would get. We want to make sure that the money is actually coming back into their pockets. So we're going to take that on because, the reality is we know that most people don't pay attention to these things. We're all the same way in our personal lives. We sign up for Verizon and it's a $200 for the family plan, and a year later it's $260, and you have no idea how it happened. And you don't realize it until, that cost is so high that you take the time to do it. And businesses are no different. The crises they face every day are pulling all their attention, and they just don't think that this stuff matters as much. And it does. People work really hard to bring in every dollar, and if it just goes to these various vendors, they're working for free.
So Nicole, you brought up a really interesting point. Something that me as a small business owner, one of the things that I struggled with at the beginning was learning how to delegate. It's how do you delegate? I mean, I know that Gladdy probably gets very frustrated with me sometimes because it took me forever to get off my paper calendar and to get everything on my Google calendar. And she's constantly having to like get me refocused and everything. So I'm just going to put that out there. So Gladdy, let's go back to you, since I've already brought you up. How do you get people to learn to delegate? What are some of the tools that you've done to like nudge me to let go of certain things? Or you don't have to use me. You don't have to say what you've done to me, because if you don't want to, but what do you do like with your clients to get them to delegate, to come up with these SOPs and to follow them? What is it how do you help them through that?
Well, mostly probably asking questions. And when I start asking questions, then it gives them an idea of like, oh, we're missing this. We haven't talked about it yet. We probably should document this one. And when it comes to usually with my biggest client probably before with website maintenance. Um, it's very important that you have a SOP in place when you're doing content edits on websites and stuff like that. Because when you don't follow that, like other team members, if they don't know what to do, it just screws up the website or something. So with you, it just depends on what we're doing every day. Like some tasks come up and then we haven't talked about it yet. So I just ask you, how should we do it? What do you mean by delegate? Delegate tasks?
Yes, yes. How do you get people to delegate? Like, I'm doing better about delegation, right? The fact that we've hired another team member, right?
Yeah.
And trying to let other people help out. And that's something that I know it struggled when I first started, when I was running service learning, which is an experiential learning program. That was one of the hardest things that I had to do. But when growing that program, I had to learn to delegate. I had to let go and let people do things and make mistakes. And that was so hard to do. It's easier now, and I'm being much more accepting of, like, there may not be doing it my way, but it's getting done, and that's what's important, right? So I see that, like everyone on the screen is nodding their head up there, right? Go ahead.
As an advisor, the business owner has to be willing to delegate. And I have worked with clients that I sit there and watch the business beat them up because they're trying to do so much and trying to do everything and don't want to it's their baby. And they don't. This one lady I was working with, she didn't want to let anything go. And as she was growing and growing and growing, it was getting too big for her to control. And she did not want to delegate. And so I just really had to let it beat her up until she got wore out. And then you might want to think about bringing somebody on to delegate. I'm interested in a lot of the chats. We're talking about the ADHD, since I'm married to somebody with ADHD. And a lot ADHD are extremely creative people. But as far as the day-to-day, I call it the bright, shiny object syndrome. I mean, here comes bright, shiny object. They're on that bright, shiny object, and it may behoove them to bring in a fractional person that can help them do some of the mundane things that they just don't want to do or don't have the ability to do because they're, like Julie said, their brains are wired differently. And so it's interesting, all the comments about the ADHD, because I had not thought about that in the past. So that was interesting.
I have a comment about delegation. So when I served as the COO, I trained the staff in delegation. We had an SOP for how to delegate. So it's a learnable skill. I think oftentimes people believe like I'm good at it or I'm not. It's like, no, I just don't know how to do it yet. There's a book I really like. It's called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And he took the latest and greatest of cognitive science research and put it into a book, the early 2000s. And he has a saying that control is a master addiction. So we love control as humans, and we love things to live in our heads because it feels safe there. So a lot of the work that I've done is just getting things out of people's heads and letting them like feel what it feels like to get things out and into the hands of someone else. And so that's just a repeatable process. I love David Allen, by the way. Really, really interesting guy. Studied a lot of martial arts and had a very interesting life before getting to corporate training. And so he then corporatized basically the art of letting go, which to me is what delegation is all about.
So Nicole, as companies start to grow, they have some SOPs in place and they start growing. Those SOPs are going to be having to change. What are some of the symptoms that they outgrown their SOPs? What do you do to help them on that? So as they're growing and they have these SOPs in place, and as Jeffrey's already mentioned, people have these SOPs in place, but they're losing money because they're not going back and revisiting them. So what are some of the symptoms?
I think one of the symptoms that an SOP needs to change is where you start to lose momentum, or people start to work around the process. You know, like they start to find workarounds. So it's documented in this way, but actually then this person across the way has a quicker way of doing the thing. And so they're circumventing the process. And then it becomes difficult to manage the performance and the output. And so it's not necessarily immediately glaringly obvious, but you feel it because productivity starts to slow down, you know, or when you, as the person responsible for the output, so the manager in this case, look back, something has gone wrong, for instance, and you look to track back the steps to see how we got to a particular outcome, those steps haven't been followed. And then you realize that people are taking their own route, you know, they're finding different ways to crack the egg. And then you realize that it needs to change. I think, and that for me is symptomatic that it's not just about kind of the operating procedure needing to change, but it's also about how you empower the people that are closest to the work to make those changes themselves, you know, rather than it always going upwards to the person who's the manager to be seen to be responsible for fixing those things, but pushing responsibility to the people who are actually doing the work and giving them agency to change the things as and when they need to. Otherwise, it always kind of trickles up is the wrong way, but it comes back up to management who, to somebody else's point, are busy prioritizing other things. Those SOPs don't get changed. That continues to be a bottleneck. Momentum continues to slow down, right? So it's kind of, it's not glaringly obvious that that needs to change. You realize it when things have gone wrong, typically, you know, and you're trying to track back why, and the path has deviated from the path that you set. I think the quickest fix to that, part of the fix to that, is to empower people to make those changes as and when they're necessary, but being clear about the things that are most important to you, right? So where are your absolute red lines so they don't cross those things, and giving them sandboxes that they can work within to make those changes so that you don't lose momentum.
Right. So as you're speaking, I'm thinking about Bill over here. He works at a university. Talk about over SOP, right? Right? It's over SOP. I mean, Jeffrey, is that what you find a lot of times with your clients? It might be over SOP. I think we just came with a new word here today.
No, not in our areas. They don't have any. So they're just, like I said, they're just going along and letting it happen. And you know, even if they just do something, you know, if they're not working with us, but if they just set up a simple process like we all do, just, you know, twice a year, gonna go back and look at those everyday bills, you know, they have a better chance of actually doing it if they put it on their calendar. But it's still, you know, I always liken it to, you know, you have 20 things every day you want to get done. And, you know, reviewing your bills is never in the top 20. It's always number 21. So if there's a way to get it into that top 20 so you actually do it, if either hiring somebody, having somebody like Gladdy, or us, or, you know, you just have to set up a process. Otherwise, you're literally losing money over the course of time.
Like, who do you want to pay? Do you want to pay an employee? Do you want to pay a consultant? I mean, my job when I was running the company was to not be paying consultants. So I better start doing these SOPs. Otherwise, my money's going to go somewhere. And Nicole touched on it. For us, the red light was losing money. So we owed a vendor $300,000. We missed paying that vendor. We were growing like wildfire. As a result, that indicated to us we didn't have an SOP with our finance department. And our finance person was maxed out and couldn't implement systems. So our business, the output showed us that we had a weakness in it. Ultimately, we decided to let her go, fire her, bring in someone who could build process. And we weren't really able to catch back up to that shortfall. That really, really hurt. And so businesses have this all the time. Talk to business owners constantly. Financial pressure is the biggest indicator that there's a missing SOP, so to speak, or a missing process. So I would say start to pay attention. At the same time, I'm curious y'all's thoughts too. Like, it's a lagging indicator. Like like if you miss a payment, that's a lagging indicator, and now you're on a sinking ship. So then how do you start to plug those holes quickly so that you can get your ship like back up and capsized? So that's one thing I've started to pay attention to with business owners.
That leads right to my next question for Coach Juli. So there was a question in the chat and it just sort of came up. I started thinking about it. So people are going, I always think about the expression, it's much easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. So you're talking about working around, people try just to work around the policies because, they find a better way of doing it. So Coach Juli, do you encourage a process about how to update the SOPs that people, there is a way for people that are doing it to make the changes to the SOP?
Well, in my experience, when there are protocols and systems in place, if you're using them consistently, you'll start noticing when things are not actually working anymore. So if they're not actually helping the business move forward and the employees or staff and other people within the company are not getting things done in the way that it's expected, then something needs to be changed, obviously. So it's when there are hiccups, as it was just stated, when things are not going well, then we need to reevaluate what the protocols are and create systems that are working for how the business is now growing or has grown. So it's a short answer to maybe a longer question, but that's in my experience all that's been needed is just update things to work as the business is growing and changing. And as the people change too, when you've got new staff members coming in, well, sometimes that ends up spurring on some changes because you've got somebody new that has different experiences that they're bringing to the table. And they might have some great ideas on how to make things better that the existing staff hadn't thought of.
I think of the university, they have all their SOPs and there's a review period. They say every 5 years they're going to be reviewing it. But when they do the actual review, it's usually the top management that makes all the decisions about how to update those SOPs. And they're not involving other people, right? The people that are actually doing the job or whatever. So it doesn't. Nicole, would you like to address that? I see your head just nodding. You're like, yes.
Nodding away furiously with all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something about the process and like the way we do things. There's also something about the organization's culture as well that enables the people, to your point, Jana, who are closest to the thing, to have autonomy and ownership over fixing the thing, right? Because the world is moving at such a rate now. New technology is emerging all of the time. To review a policy every 5 years is way too long, right? And so to give the person who's actually doing the work the opportunity to say, actually, I found a far quicker way of doing this, and the business having a process through which that decision is ratified, authorized, and the person that's doing the work can get off and do it, I think is really important so that you don't lose momentum, right? Like it's important to have the processes so, things don't get broken, you don't lose money, you don't damage your reputation, that the most important things that are most critically important to the business are preserved and aren't damaged, but you also need to maintain momentum so that your competitors don't pass you. And so you need to have some flexibility and some fluidity to enable those who are doing the work to have some agency over how they're doing the work, right? So you can continue to get things done and continue to earn money.
The speed of technology, I think reviewing every 5 years is a death wish.
Right?
Yeah, because technology is changing so fast.
Yeah.
And as business evolves so fast.
Yeah.
So my background is also in production and operations management. And at one time when I first started as an auditor with Arthur Andersen years ago, December was a horrible month because everybody was doing year-end inventories. They only did inventory checks once a year. And was something they started implementing then after that because they found out, so the books would be correct one day out of the year, and then they would not check inventory for the rest of the year and then make all the adjustments. So they started doing other things where they say, if this is an A item, then let's review that one maybe monthly because it's a very important item in inventory versus a B or a C item. A C item is not as important. So maybe that's one we'll only look at in terms of inventory once a year. But a B item, we might want to check it like updated something. Coach Julie, do you ever suggest something like that in terms of the SOPs, the ones that need to be much more agile than others, suggesting a timeline for updates like that?
In my experience, I don't work with huge companies that have huge SOP plans and everything in place. So I'm working with smaller business owners. So generally, we're looking at things as their business moves through its process and as things change. So it's not necessarily on a particular schedule. It's more of when things are starting to not work as well as they wish, then we reevaluate, okay, well, what's the system you've got in place that may need to be modified, changed, rewritten altogether. And again, as I had said earlier, when you've got new people in place, then many times things need to be altered at that point. And I had I had a really great situation with a client who noticed that because his work wasn't getting done as it needed to, he needed to put some new procedures in place in order to help his staff do more for him. So it kind of falls in the delegation conversation we had earlier, whereby he set up a whole set of new protocols, SOPs, if you will, so that his staff, his direct reports, could take on some of the tasks that he had previously been doing so that he was freed up to work with more of the high ticket items within the organization. And a whole new set of protocols need to be set up altogether in order for the staff to be able to take on more. And they were thrilled. They were thrilled because they got to have he got buy-in from them because he was able to include them in the process of setting these all up. So this made it something that the staff was actually so honored and touched that they got to do more. They got more opportunities, and they felt just really respected. And it went so well that the person that I was working with ended up getting a promotion. So it was a good end result there.
Jeffrey, there is a question in the chat that I think that that needs to be. So how often should somebody review their bills and invoice and how they're doing it? And I'm not trying to get you out of getting a job from one of these people that are participants, but what do you recommend to your clients?
I would recommend, I think from a realistic standpoint, as I mentioned before, if they're doing it themselves, I would set up a process to at least every 6 months do a check-in on your bills, make sure that it's basically about the same number, and at a minimum once a year, um, just doing a little bit of market analysis and seeing what's out there. Because as I think Bill said, everything changes so fast. And if you're not out looking, you might be missing opportunities to find, further reduced savings. You could take a few minutes and make a call, a couple of phone calls, and you either confirm you're in a good place, or you'll realize, hey, I can be doing a little bit better, and it might make some sense to change.
I'd ask back to the entrepreneur, how badly do you want cash?
Yeah.
I like cash.
Yeah, that will tell you how frequently to review your invoices.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Gladdy and I like
But
cash.
I think it's also what's realistic for people.
Right.
People just, again, it's dealing with their Verizon bills or their waste management or any of these types of everyday expenses. They're just not going to do it. I mean, it's just we all know it from personal experience. It sounds great, and I agree with you. If you want the money, you got to do the work, but people don't. So to the point of this whole conversation is at least set up a procedure, and whether it's every 3 months, 6 months, even every year, at least you're doing something, looking at it.
Yeah, put it on your calendar, right? Put it
Yep.
on your calendar. It's a little event. I mean, like I know that Gladdy puts on our calendar when she's going to be sending out the newsletter. It's on there. It's a free time, but it's like as a reminder to make sure that those things do get done. I'm not sure this is right, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to kind of take this a little bit of a turn before we have to start closing down. But management, we keep bringing it up about the people. and it's about the management style, about the personality type. So it almost seems like in order to really help people to to do more standard operating procedures, they really need to be looking in as a person, right? To find out more about who they are and if they're coachable, right? I mean, Bill, you talk about that all the time with your clients. If they're not coachable,
Well, you have to have the right people on the right bus and in the right seats on the right bus. I had a friend of mine had a mortgage company, and this lady came to work every day, but she was always sour. She did her job, and nobody liked her. And the staff wanted to fire her. He pulled her in. She was in the wrong job. Changed jobs. She's still doing the job. She was a lot happier. Everybody's a lot happier. So having the right person, the same in the right position. If you're going to have an accountant, you don't really want a dominant personality or a I personality going through this. You want somebody who enjoys getting in the numbers and doing those numbers. When we teach profit mastery, we tell them, sometimes we have to do workout strategies. And if they find at the end of the year they've got a workout strategy that needs, that's really too late. That they really needed 36 months before then before you start trying to do a workout strategy for somebody, because it's gone on for so long. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's important to get the right personality, right person, right. And not everybody's self looking, self-examining. So it's kind of up to management to figure that out as well.
they're not being reflective about what their part was
Right.
in the decision or something of that sort. If they're always blaming somebody else instead of going, okay, so what could have I done differently?
Right.
So consultants up there, how do you handle that? How do you work with the personalities to get them to look inside to see whether or not they have the right people in the right spot? Let's start with you, Coach Juli. What do you think?
Great question. I was like, I want to answer this one.
Oh, okay.
The majority of my work, that's what I do. I'm helping people figure out, are they doing what they are good at, if that's their superpower or strength or not. And I had a perfect example I was working with a medical practice, and they came to me not being able to, things were not clicking. They weren't working as efficiently as they could, and things were falling through the cracks. Patients were having to wait way too long. So we had a lot of systems that had to be put in place. A lot of protocols were set up. And one of the things that I did in working with this practice was I was always evaluating what each staff member was doing. And I also had then private conversations with every single one of them. And I asked them just straight up, do you like your job? Are you happy with what you're doing? And it turned out two of them, there was a small practice, there was, I think, 7 or 8, staff members, they basically said, no, actually, I used to do back office. I really like back office. And now I've been doing front office all this time and I don't like it and I'm not happy here. And so clearly they weren't putting their best foot forward. So I then found out one of the other people, she was doing back office, she wanted to be front office. So I was able to move people around and have them do the job that they were best suited for. And no surprise to me, everything started to shift. Everyone was happier. They were in their happy place because they were able to use their strengths, and they were able to do the things that they had gifts to do. And this is where the whole practice just elevated so beautifully because they were doing what they were best at. And that was because I asked. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking a simple question. Are you happy with what you're doing? Or what would you rather be doing? And that was the one I actually asked. What would you rather be doing? And they answered. So I was able to change things around. And then we set up the protocols for that situation right off the bat. It was a great result.
So Nicole, your background's in HR. So this is right up your alley.
Yeah, I was listening to Coach Juli and I was thinking, how do I what's the bottom line from that? I think part of it is having a tough conversation Asking someone that question isn't in of itself a tough conversation, but sometimes we can feel quite uncomfortable having what we think are personal conversations. But it's amazing how impactful asking what seems like a very simple question can be, right? Are you happy in this thing? What would make you happier? And then stepping back and seeing what's possible. And sometimes, it's not always possible to change someone's entire role, but maybe you can craft out time in their day, in their week, enabling them to do the thing that does give them joy. Or if it's actually, they have a superpower that's orientated towards process and structure, leveraging that when you do need to review them, as Jeffrey has said, finding ways that you can pull on those strengths to the extent that you can. But I think, as Coach Judy said, it's about having the conversation, right? And taking time to get to know your people beyond the task, but understanding their passions, their motivators, the things that give them joy, and as best you can, aligning them with your needs.
Jonathan, as a communicator expert, how would you address that?
The people question, like how do you get the right people? Well, let's speak from my own personal experience and my numerous conversations with business owners and my consulting work. It usually comes down to their unwillingness to let one person go. So the bottleneck usually is a business partner or trusted office administrator or operator that is clearly not performing, and they're unwilling because there's a lot of fear in letting that person go. So it comes to what Nicole just said, it's a really hard conversation. And the belief is that if I let this person go, then the business is going to stop running, I'm going to go bankrupt. It's all this fear, which tends to not be true. And when that person is let go, growth just really tends to happen. So that's been my personal experience.
So we're getting close to the end, and I have two questions for everybody, but we'll first, all right, the first question I'm going to have everybody answer is, what is the one thing you would like for people to take away from this conversation about SOPs? And I'll tell you what the second question is so that you can be thinking about that as well. And the second question is, when should somebody call you? What is the circumstance that someone should call you and ask you for your help? What is it that would be, when should somebody call you? What is it they should know? Okay, so starting with the very first question, what is the most important thing that you think someone should be taking away about SOPs? Bill, start with you.
To have one.
You have one?
No, to have one.
Oh, to have one.
To have an SOP.
Okay.
To have an SOP in place and have it written down and have the training procedures written down for that SOP.
Okay, Jonathan.
Everyone has one. So you have one, and if you don't know what it is, then it's unconscious. So make it conscious.
Get it from the head to the paper. Okay, Jeffrey, what's the one thing you want people to take away from today?
Have them and review them.
Guys, you guys are being very succinct. I didn't even say you had to do it in 9 words. You're doing it. All right, Nicole, what's one thing you think everybody should take away today? Oh,
You muted.
yeah, we got you muted.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I love what you were saying about everyone having one. You might not know what it is, but everyone has it. So if it's subconscious, spend time, get it out of your head and get it down.
Gladdy, what's one thing you want people to take away from this today? Oops, you're muted too. Gladdy, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
I did it again. Well, SOPs are living documents, and as a virtual assistant, I rely on SOPs to execute tasks efficiently and consistently. When they're outdated or incomplete, it can lead to confusion, extra back and forth communication, or mistakes that could have been avoided. So keeping SOPs updated ensures that anyone on the team can follow the same process and get the same results.
Awesome. And Coach Juli.
I have a couple. First one, in my experience, a process or system doesn't need to be perfect, fancy, or super techy to be useful. It just needs to make the steps clear and easy, providing clarity for everyone involved. And document right from the start. Make sure that as you are growing or starting your business or you're opening a new department and you've got new people, start creating these processes right at the beginning So it's not this heavy lift of having to figure it out after things have already started to move forward.
That's exactly right. Start early, and it's not going to be perfect. Just start the process.
Do it.
And fine tune the process as you go along.
And there's
Exactly.
just use Loom. Like, if I don't know if folks are familiar with Loom, get a subscription to Loom and just record your screen, and it will do it for you. So this is so low barrier now. It's so easy to do. It just takes the commitment, to doing it. There's a really powerful story with what's the real estate mogul's name? Gary
Keller?
Gary Keller. Yeah, thank you. So he was a super entrepreneur, but he could never implement process. And so what he did was, at the time, he just hired an assistant to follow him as he would go open new offices in different cities. And that assistant's job was to write down everything he did. And that's how he scaled his real estate business across the United States. And so now with technology like Looms, like we can do that. So be like Gary, make it easy for yourself.
And he has a lot of different books out.
One thing
Yes.
is, his book. He's got a great podcast on how to think like a CEO, where they just interview him. He's a great, just as an entrepreneur, we get to set our lives and we get to hire the people, bring people in. Make one a scribe. Make that your first hire. Just hire someone to do the things you don't want to do. Kind of concept of capitalism. Anyway, I'll stop.
Yeah, I don't like looking at email.
Someone you can pay someone to do that.
And I do.
Hey, Gladdy.
Yeah, Gladdy looks at all my email, and then she goes,
Yeah.
you need to look at this one. And she goes, well, did you see this email? And it's like, no, because I quit looking at email. But yeah, she keeps me on track. Yeah, I get it. I start looking at email and I just go down this rabbit hole. I mean, the next 4 hours I'm in email and I haven't gotten anything done, right? So Gladdy does all that for me. I'm so grateful. Okay, so now we have so many people here that are participants that are listening to this webinar today. Not only today, but we'll have the recordings out on the SBDC. Gladdy is putting them out on a YouTube for our website. So you can always go back to watch these at a later tape. So for those here today and those that are going to be watching it in the future, when should they call you and hire you for your services? When is a good time? What should they be saying to themselves? Like for me, I do business valuations. I do them if there's a business that's involved in a divorce. If a business is trying to be put into estate, they have to call me. If a partner is leaving a business, they want to call me so I can do a business valuation. So at what point they're saying to themselves, hey, I really need to know how much my business is really worth. That's when they need to call me. Call me. And if you just want a rule of thumb, I can give you that for free. But if you really want to know what your business is actually worth, then yeah, you're going to have to pay money for that. So that's when you need to call me. Okay, so should we start here? Who would like to start that off? Did I give you enough time? Because usually when it's somebody you ask a question, you haven't had time.
Are you looking at me?
I was just hoping that you already know the answer. When should people call you, Bill?
Well, it's a dumb answer that I have, but it's the only one I can think of, and that's before the crisis.
Good luck.
I said, no, good answer.
But
I called you before my crisis. I love working with Bill. Bill is a former counselor, correct? You have
Yeah.
So talking with Bill is I look forward to it every month because he has the business experience also with the mental and emotional experience. And that's what I look for in, someone I'm working with as an advisor or consultant. So big shout out to the SBDC and Bill.
yeah, Bill is great.
Okay. No. Thank you.
Well, you wouldn't have been my business partner if you weren't awful. Because he used to be my business partner.
Bill, more love for Bill. Bill is awesome.
He is.
Let's see how uncomfortable we can make Bill.
Yeah, and when he does retire from the SBDC, he's going to come work. This is being recorded, you know.
No, really.
Okay, so I bet Nicole right now is thinking about all the HR mistakes I have just made, and as she's checking it off, and she's going, we're having a discussion offline later on about what you just did that was incorrect. Okay, so Nicole, would you like to go next, but not correct me?
Nothing
Don't tell me
to
what I did wrong.
I appreciated the love. I would say business founders should call me when they feel stuck, when momentum feels like it's slowed, when they've invested in their people and their processes, but things are just taking longer and they can't quite figure it out. And it might be that they need to do a bit of a diagnostic to understand if it's a process, if it's the culture, if it's work sitting between teams. We can help them identify the root cause of the problem, work with the teams to get things working, support their leaders in terms of, okay, now you understand the direction of travel, here are the skills that you need to enable that, and all the stuff that goes around it, all the systematic changes that enable that kind of cultural shift. So that's when to call me, when you feel stuck.
I'm glad you brought up culture.
Oh,
What? I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that is something we probably should have brought up the whole time today about SOPs, because if you don't have a culture that supports having SOPs, it won't
Yeah.
make any difference if you have an SOP or not.
yeah, no. We can talk about that next time.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll do that next time.
That's a good topic.
That is a good topic. Well,
Yeah.
we got to add that.
Yeah.
If we already have the topic set for this year. So that'll be on next year's topic. So you guys are all going to have to come back next year when we go to culture. Okay, Jeffrey, when should somebody call you?
I would say there's kind of two times. One, if they just want a no-cost audit to see where they are and see if there's opportunities to reduce their costs. That'll be a very light lift from their end that could make a significant difference in their business. Or two, very often we get calls when people are getting hit with other bills. For instance, their health insurance premiums, it just came in and it went up by 20%. Well, we can't help them offset 20% increases in the health insurance area. We can help them reduce the pain a little bit in some other areas often. So very often we'll get calls when, other bills are going up and they just, it's not something we look at, but they just need to get control over their costs in any possible way.
And we really need to emphasize, you don't charge anything unless you find savings.
Correct. There's no cost for our audit for our entire process until the client decides to move forward with one of our recommendations.
And really, you're improving cash flow in a short amount of time. That's what you guys do.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I forget who, it might have been you, Jonathan, who said, when you wait till that, you miss the bill, that's the point we can come in and there and help clean up some of the mess, and at least alleviate it a little bit, in a relatively short period of time. A few 2 to 3 months, we can start seeing a significant impact.
Awesome. Coach Juli, when should somebody call you?
When they are, same with Nicole, stuck. Most of my clients come to me because they're overwhelmed. They are not meeting expectations, either at work or with their own company. If they are burned out and disorganized, these are generally the reasons people are coming to me. And I work not just with their business challenges, but also their personal life, because in my field, coaching is holistic. Whatever you're dealing with in your personal life is going to affect your business and vice versa. So I work with people on their mindset, on helping them to put systems in place for their entire life, not just in their business. It's really very broad.
And Gladdy, close this off. When should somebody call you?
They should call me or hire me when they start feeling overwhelmed with daily tasks or when their operations are becoming harder to manage. If they're spending too much time on administrative work, marketing tasks, or managing systems instead of focusing on growing their business, that's usually a good time to bring in support. And also, when they need help organizing processes, managing CRM systems, documenting workflows, or keeping their marketing and online platforms updated.
Awesome. And I want to thank everybody for being on our panel today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise with everybody. Really appreciate you taking time out of your days to be here today. And thank you to all the participants that were here at the webinar and for your comments in the chat. Jane will be sending out an email to everybody that was here today with all the contact information of all of our panelists, so that everybody in the participants that were here today will have your contact information. But thank you everybody for being here, and sorry that we went a little bit over today, but it was so exciting. We had so many great people here today. So thank you everyone for being here. And Nicole, I don't know, which one's the furthest, Philippines or England?
England. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
maybe the Philippines, actually. I'm not sure. But it's been a joy, so thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And
Thanks.
and we'll see you next month.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.